Hello all, hope you're doing well today. It's no secret that Britain is in a very bad way. We're struggling economically, spiritually and culturally, we're in bits, and we're in the midst of a sort of vast identity crisis wrought on us by decades of embracing globalist neoliberalism and multicultural ideology. The best symbol of the state of modern Britain is probably the Labour Party. At present, we can see them trying to revive the ailing corpse of Blairism without realising we're in a new, divided and dangerous world. But because we're so out of ideas, or at least they are, we're stuck with this obstinate blandness represented by Keir Starmer, perhaps the most boring Prime Minister of all time. He seems more like a robot than a man. With every passing week, there's some new disaster from the Labour government that Keir Starmer barely seems to even notice. He just ploughs on regardless. However, we can see the country that we once knew and loved turning into something increasingly alien and strange. Since the beginning of Starmer's premiership, we've had waves of censorship, the effective jailing of political dissidents, and now they want to scrap juries while moving mayoral elections that don't suit them. The Telegraph is also reporting that Starmer plans to seize control of the House of Lords and eliminate opposition peers in the near future as well. What we're witnessing here in Britain is what's going on around the whole of the West, really. The liberal system is starting to lose control, it's starting to buckle under the weight of its own hypocrisy, so it's becoming more censorious and tyrannical in order to maintain its grip on power. Now, things are getting more and more fractured and tense on the ground level as well. You obviously have a big surge to the right going on amongst the mass of the population, but then you also have differing ethno-religious groups piping up, wanting their own representation, starting to square off with other groups and the rest of it. Now, this was always going to happen in the multicultural mass immigration system. The powers that be say it's because of divisive rhetoric without realising that their rhetoric is dividing people too. Divisions are a normal part of life in human groups. Doesn't mean you can't have mixing of different peoples, but you always need one dominant group in any given country or geographical space in order for that culture to flourish and to maintain its identity. You have to deal with cultural exchange in a very delicate and wise manner, very respectful manner. We've done the exact opposite in the modern West, basically in the interests of money on the one side and wacky left-wing ideology, which has all the deftness of a bull in a china shop. Another thing I've noticed you get on the more radical fringes of the left, which is going to lead to mutiny, is a certain hyperbole, a completely over-the-top hysteria. I saw this fella Femi, he's a political commentator of some sort on the left, talking to Zach Polanski, saying how his black friends carry weapons in the car with them, apparently, I guess because they think they might be attacked by a roaming group of white racists. Now, I haven't seen much about any of these attacks Femi is referencing actually happening. I mean, if they are happening, they do seem to be vanishingly rare. I mean, the mainstream still talks about Stephen Lawrence, and yeah, that was horrific, but it was, 35 years ago? But the murder of Stephen Lawrence, as horrible as it was, has become something of a core element of the modern British liberal mythology about why we need to have the multicultural system. You'll note how they don't talk about Chris Donald and his brutal murder for being white. If you mention that, you're a racist. That's been buried over the years. Another clear flaw in Femi's view here is we don't have any solid data with regards to violent crime breakdowns along racial lines. The powers that be don't report that sort of thing. I wonder why. Personally, I'd assume there isn't actually that many roving groups of wild racists just attacking black folks and other minorities. If there is, I'm sure these things are quite rare. It's probably more common, in my view, the other way around. Not to mention the elephant in the room, the real risk that black people, especially young black males, face in modern Britain is other young black males. Black males actually face 4 times higher levels of violence than white males in England and Wales, and I dare say many of you might agree with me in that violence isn't being perpetuated by Steve, a 60-year-old would-be reform voter who lives in Devon, but it tends to come from other black males who live in places like Peckham and engage in gang warfare. Of course, that narrative won't fit their worldview. However, you can see through the rhetoric of people like Femi and Zach Polanski that they're actually promoting the violence that they so decry. What I mean is when you start talking about having to have a weapon in your car, everybody's being attacked. I think Femi made a video saying he had to join the Green Party because if they don't win, he'll be dead in 10 years or something. This sort of nonsense and hyperbole only serves to inflame things on one side of the divide. And of course, over time, that just creates a tit for tat as things heighten and pressurize. Put simply, if you're indoctrinated into believing that your political opponents are going to attack you, maybe physically harm you, maybe even kill you, that radicalizes you. You start to think that any action is justified on your part, and we've seen how that can get out of control with the assassination of Charlie Kirk in America. I've spoken about it before, but it's unbelievable how perhaps the biggest voice in US right-wing politics in the media got taken out by a left-wing lunatic, and they still act like they're the tolerant and kind ones, even while they're literally spitting on his grave. It's absolutely crazy. But this brings me to the key point of the video. Yes, things are very bad in Britain. We constantly have this game of identity being played where we're told we don't really exist, we're a nation of immigrants and the rest of it. Oh, we do exist, of course, when we've done something bad like colonialism. But in reality, we're just seeing Britain a little further down the road of decline than other countries. Even in America, where things look quite good on the surface with Trump, who makes these based statements and so on, they're facing exactly the same problems that we are, as is every Western nation. I often think things don't seem as bad in America, number one because of Trump, but number two because it's so big. You know, you can live in some state and basically feel like it's the America of old. There's no one around you apart from a community for miles and miles. In England, we're all crammed in together, so you see the effects of modern liberalism every day. Now, all of this belies a demographic situation in the US, which is actually a lot further down the road than the UK. We are going to be a minority if things continue at about 2060. However, in America, that will come around 2040, 2045, basically 15 or 20 years. And this is why it's odd when certain American commenters will look at Britain and Europe and see the state we're in and say, you know, we've fallen. But in a sense, they're in exactly the same boat. They just, have Trump at the moment giving them a different view on things. But fundamentally, the whole of the West is in this together. Now, I'm not saying this to gloat to any of our American friends. It's not a competition of who's worse off. But you can see some of the things that happen in America are still shocking to us over here. To this story recently, breaking, a Portland jury has acquitted a black man, Gary Edwards, of stabbing a white man after claiming he heard the victim use a racial slur, ruling the attack was, quote, self-defense, despite Edwards' prior assault convictions, including a 2020 stabbing. I mean, this sort of thing is completely crazy. It's Orwellian. It's the sort of thing you expect from the Starminator, but it's happening in America. Some people even say that he said the slur word after he was stabbed anyway. Also, this came up recently. Tim Pool, you may know him, he's sort of a libertarian, right-leaning podcaster. He stated that last night a vehicle approached his property where they film his podcasts and opened fire. Now, one can only assume that this has similarities to the Charlie Kirk assassination. Tim Pool platforms right-wingers are evil, we're the good people, staving off an attack against us, so we've got to attack them first. This is where the rhetoric of the Femis and the Zach Polanskis inevitably leads. And just like over here, America has its fair share of progressive politicians who go to areas full of migrants and eat the slop food. This guy Jacob Frey was filmed eating some Somalian beans and clearly didn't like them by the look on his face, although had to pretend the food was great, obviously. Then he's prancing around trying to ingratiate himself with the local community, saying how wonderful Somalians are and multicultural is, and the rest of it before he returns home to his all-white enclave. Again, it's not just Britain, it's not just the US. Across the Western world, you have the true believer progressive idiots who think all these groups coming from different corners of the world all just want to partake in the wonderful multicultural liberal project. In reality, what these groups are doing is using that model in order to agitate for their own ethno-religious interests down the line.
waa hal walaalaan wada nahay dhulkeena lagama kala qaybsanaayo dhulal baa naga maqan aan raadsanaynaa insha Allah mar maalinta laakiin inta aan haysan hadda lama kala qaybinayo marka waa mahadsantihiin dhammaantiin.
I mean, why is this woman in US politics? Her loyalties are clearly with Somalia. But you know what? I don't actually even blame her for thinking this way, because people have a spiritually indelible tie to their homeland, to their people, to their history, to their tradition. These things aren't just going to be rubbed out with some trendy neo-Marxist ideology. To my mind, we in the West have woken up to this in an incredibly slow fashion. It is speeding up now, but we have to realise that being concerned about multiculturalism and mass immigration isn't just because you, quote unquote, hate other people. You know, you just see a different skin tone and go apoplectic with rage. It's just nonsense. It's you have a deep recognition that different groups are going to agitate for different things. And if you keep bringing in every Tom, Dick and Harry from every corner of the world, it's not going to be England anymore. It's not going to be Europe anymore. It's not going to be America anymore. In essence, no matter where you are in the Western world, there is no escaping this. The only way out now is to go through the coming chaos, and to my mind, it will come. You can see the increasing radical language on the left, the basically moral authority they give themselves to attack people they don't like. We can see on the street level the different groups coming here, and the fractures and the tensions will build. And eventually, I think it will get out of control. The right will organise and hit back hard. I'm not promoting that. I'm not promoting any form of violence. Don't do anything stupid. I'm predicting it. I think we have set in motion things which basically can't be reversed at this point now. But as I always say, it seems to me we're coming to the end of a cycle, and things will start to fall apart and move into a chaotic structure, and through that a new order will eventually rise. These are my thoughts as always. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new, and enjoy the rest of your day.